Is tears as the North Americans get battered by the Danes. TSM 16-0. We can't believe what we've seen on the analysis desk. And out Team Liquid can either. They look like they've been hit by a truck when we saw them out back. I'm your host, Richard Lewis, on the desk, and I've got Maniac, Yanko, and Vendetta. We're going to try and analyze that. I think we need to start by saying, let's analyze our terrible predictions. I'll start with mine. I said, I think it'll still be one of the games of the day.
No, it was. I mean, it was.
But I suppose it's remarkable, right?
I mean,
no, it certainly wasn't close, which we all thought it was going to be. So let's start there. Why wasn't it close? What was up with Team Liquid?
Well, the thing is, like, you saw how for the last game we had that replay. You know, we're gonna have probably those during the tournament, the whole of the tournament. So I went backstage and the guys were like, "Hey, do you want something to replay for this game?" And I was like, "Nope, there's nothing to replay here." It was so depressing to watch. If I rewatch any of it, I'm gonna be, you know, in a real bad mental state. Like, the thing is, there are two ways to lose the game. You can get outplayed, outsmarted by your opponent, you know, your calls are being read and you just lose the game because of that, or you can just straight up get outplayed, out-aimed, and Liquid was they were really terrible individually. You saw how many rounds they lost when they had actually an early advantage. They lost 5v3 rounds. I think that round in the end was actually a 5v2 round, which Device clutched in the end. I mean, those are some mistakes you cannot allow to make, and they made them over and over again in this match.
In many ways, it was pretty much like seeing them replay that 1v4 round from Edward at San Jose just over and over again. It's like, we're doing this just repeatedly, just smashing our own hopes.
And actually, what happened to me is that I've been saying that Liquid should not let TSM get on fire at the beginning of the game, and this is exactly what happened. I mean, 6-0, and after that, even though they tried to went aggressive, they never really take TSM out of their comfort zone. I mean, that's the amount of like deficit rounds they've been winning. Is like the living proof that they were in control, whatever what was happening. So, extremely strong performance from TSM.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the flip side to the coin, right? Like, if we can be down on Team Liquid, but I mean, TSM. I mean, first of all, we talked about the double D combination. We talked about the Dream and Device. They were going absolutely ham, but I mean, everybody had an incredible individual level of performance.
Yeah, I actually think like Sipnix was probably the player who set the tone for TSM early on, and that's something you don't normally see. Normally, it is Occasion, Device, Dupree who gets things going for TSM, but Sipnix saved the pistol round for them. He saved several rounds afterwards. So, you know, once they got up to the point of 5-0, after that, Device just kind of took over the show.
I mean, the thing is, if you want to try and give some sort of analysis here, if you look at because you have to look at the beginning of the game. You know, after you're down like 8-0, 9-0, the game's pretty much over at that point. Especially since Overpass is a city-sided map, TSM is an amazing thing on the city side. So, as you mentioned, it started off with a 2v1 that they lost in the pistol round. Then we get to the second round. They don't even buy armor. They're in a 5v3 round. Now, here's something I dislike about TSM, and they do it on a lot of maps. They go for this kind of default spread out anti-eco round, and you see what can happen. You know, amazing one dig from Fugly, another kill, and you're down like 3v5. And it was by pure luck, I think, and kind of Liquid at that point should just pull back into the sides. You're 5v3, you try to get the info, then you rotate, you have the numbers advantage, so you try to win a round like that. They didn't do that, they got picked off, it ended up in a 3v3, which TSM won in the end. First gun round, you have, I think it was a Liege, jumping, you know, and Dupree hit an amazing shot. But the thing is, the gun round after that, Carragher gets an op entry kill on a Dren through Monster. So it's like 2 gun rounds in a row, you start with a deficit in the first 15 seconds of the round. Yeah. What you want to do, if you're already lost the pistol round and you're down 3-0, you want to take some sort of a risk, and I mean like maybe push with 2 or 3 guys towards A long, because you know the TSM really likes to play out of their defaults. So you try to, you know, team up, get that early kill, get the advantage, and then later on you can play those standard rounds for info, because when you're down 5-0 and you go for a duel and you lose it and you see what happens, it just goes downhill straight from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was like a double problem for Liquid. On one hand, they couldn't really go aggressive and take the entry frag because TSM was absolutely ready for that. You can see they were waiting in the T stairs, waiting in the door on B with Crossfire. So not only couldn't they get the entry frag, but they weren't actually ready to counter their execution. TSM has very great and has a lot of diversity in their execution as T. They could finish up on A, they could finish up on B, coming from long, coming from the middle. So if you want to go against TSM, you have to set the tone. You have to get early frag, and then you have to actually win the round, not lose those 5v4, 4v3. So yeah, they had nothing going their way.
Let's kind of look at Team Liquid, just what that's going to do to them mentally going into the next game, because, like, you know, 16-0s, they don't happen often. We've talked about this a bunch of times, how when one happens, it's usually almost like a pivotal moment in a team. We saw it with Virtus Pro. That's what prompted Neo to start AWPing. Things had to change. And it was just one result in isolation in Valencia. Now, they're still in a tournament here. They've still got to sort of bounce back from that. I mean, how do you shrug off a 16-0?
Well, you know, as cheesy as it sounds, you have to block it out. It's really that simple. And I guess you can discuss whether or not the loss they had versus Na'Vi at IEM actually played a bit coming into this as well, because they were clearly shocked or shook by what happened on that Dust 2. So if that's getting brought along, if they couldn't actually reset properly, even though it's days apart, but you know, when you get into that deep hole and everything's going wrong, maybe you're just completely broken because you know how how tilted you get by not having success in situations where you should win. So that could just tilt them off completely. So I'm actually really excited to see what they're going to do versus.
Well, I mean, I always think NA teams are particularly susceptible to this. They do seem to be a bit more about what are people going to say, you know, than their European counterparts.
Maybe it sounds weird, but I actually think it's better to lose a game like this than the way they lost against Na'Vi on Dust 2, being up 47, losing 9 rounds in a row. Here you can just say after game, okay, guys, we all played terribly. We made like the dumbest mistakes we'll probably ever make, you know, in our careers. So let's just, you know, forget this game, pretend it never happened, and, you know, start fresh tomorrow. Because I mean, there's nothing else you can do. The thing is, as I mentioned, I think that they just gave so many openings to TSM when there was no need for that. They played really, really bad individually, and I think they should just, as Van said, block it out and start new tomorrow.
Yeah, and of course you've had a lot of experience from that in your playing career.
Of course, it was like
in fact, you just
myself.
blocked out the whole career,
more or less. Yeah, that's why I'm here now. I suck at playing.
I guess that's the benefit, though. If you're Liquid, you can't do any worse. It literally requires. It should be an achievement for performing worse than what you did today.
I imagine if they manage to take a round in the next game, there'll be a big cheer and a
100% increase.
No,
right there.
Is, you know, they say often that you have to like hit the floor to bounce back.
Yeah,
and obviously, when you are going to a tournament, one of your faults could be, I'm afraid to get crushed. I'm afraid what will happen if we get destroyed. Well, now that happened. Now it's behind them. I mean, it cannot get any worse. Yeah. So maybe it will like release some kind of pressure, like feeling to not very perform well because, well, now it's there. It's just behind you. So don't think about it. Just go straight for the next game, and that might be just what they need to bounce back and to get destroyed.
Let's hope. Well, anyway, look, since there isn't a lot to analyze, I guess we can jump to a commercial break. But before we do that, I'll just get some final thoughts. Is there anything else worth saying about this bizarre result?
I mean, TSM sent them back into the Stone Age. That's pretty much it. You know, we're talking about Liquid being on the rise, showing progress, and they just got stomped way back. Like, that has to be soul crushing, even though you can kind of shrug it off and maybe laugh at it, like, haha, we played so poorly. That, it has to sting.
Big statement of intent from TSM as well. I mean, you know, says they're not to be written off.
Yeah, of course, as you pointed out, like they always have a strong start to a tournament. They're not, you know, kind of like NIP usually has problems, you know, warming up for a tournament and everything. They definitely showed up from the beginning, and I think we're going to have a great game now with TSM against VP.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to that one. Guys, thanks a lot for your thoughts. We will go to a commercial break. Now, as we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so not you saying that, CSGO event, we're actually ahead of schedule thanks to that stomping. So we're going to take a short break. We're going to be back at 22 the hour. So we'll see you then. Don't go too far.